Welcome to the Clegg YouTube channel, and today we've got a great show ahead of us. We've got Ben Thornley. Ben, thanks for coming and joining us.
Pleasure.
Me and Ben are going to talk about all things topical football, what's happened this week, and after that we've got Dave Fever, the ex-Man United physio who started his career in rugby and then come to Man United, and the last 16 years he's actually been at Blackburn, but he's currently now gone freelance, so we'll have a good chat with him. Then I got my section with EvoSync, which is all about breathing this week, and then Win the Moment. So Ben, topical football for the week. It's been an interesting week in the world of football, and we'll probably start with Man United's great victory at the start of the week against Chelsea. Did you watch the game?
Yeah, I was there. I was actually commentating on it for MUTV, and I think that what was so pleasing about the result was the reaction, because obviously the lads have got off to but continued with a brilliant run, and that all came to an end against PSG, a very good PSG team, it has to be said, last Tuesday, and with the loss of Jesse Lingard and Anthony Martial, it sort of took away the dynamics of the way Manchester United and the way Ole wants the team to line up with, with the pace and the counter-attacking. So that was going to be difficult. They had to change the way that they played, and it was just an overall reaction to their first defeat, and obviously being at Chelsea, a ground where we notoriously don't do that well. Albeit I was there for the league game in October where they should have won and only conceded in the 95th or 96th minute. But on this occasion they thoroughly deserved to win. They were comfortable in defence, and the two goals that they scored, especially the crosses that made the goals, were as good as you'll see this season, especially the second one from Marcus.
Yeah, it was interesting. We were talking last week when Stephen was on the show, we were talking losing against PSG was a critical point for Ole and for Mike Field, and the reaction of the players, the reaction of the fans, and whether that was the first chink in the armour. But to beat Chelsea, it was such a big game, and I don't think we'd actually won there in the last 8 years.
No.
So to get that victory, and the performance was top class, and everybody's been saying it was possibly the best performance United have had under Ole.
Yeah, it possibly could be, along with the first half against Spurs. I think that that they're probably spot on with that. They were so. I mean, Chelsea have got some class players, and I don't actually think, going back to the PSG thing, I don't actually think that was necessarily a bad thing for United to have just to take a little bit of a step back and maybe have a little bit of a reality check that PSG are and have been knocking on the door of this Champions League for years, and yes, we've still got a say in whether they get through into the next round, but you have to say that scoring 2 goals away from home, they are going to be the favourites to get through. I don't think any team has overturned a 2-goal home deficit and gone away and won 3-2 or won by 3 goals to get through. So it is going to be difficult, but the reaction of the players was great. Chelsea have got some world-class players, Eden Hazard, Kante, they have got some good players, and they're very, very strong on their own patch, but the way United took the game to them and the goals that they scored, they thoroughly deserved to win.
Yeah, I think the PSG game away is going to be difficult, like you said. Pogba's definitely not going to be playing in that game. But I spoke to a couple of the people down at Carrington. There's a chance that Martial and maybe Jesse might be back for the game, so that's really good, and hopefully that will be the case. So yeah, we put Chelsea to sleep in that game, which was great. But Pogba, he stood out again as being somebody who's really changed under Ole.
Yeah, new lease of life for Paul Pogba. He's got licence to get forward, and it's no coincidence that because of that, he's not only created goals, but he scored goals. I don't think 2 months ago you would have seen him anywhere near that second goal. Just flinging himself in between 2 defenders to dive head a ball from 6 or 7 yards out. It was a super goal, but under Jose Mourinho he would never have been there, but he has got licence, and the way the whole team are playing, it's given Manchester United a huge boost having Ole Gunnar in charge, with the way that he knows that Manchester United and the fans want them to play. And he's been doing that, and yes, we've had a slight setback with PSG, but that's no disgrace because they are a very, very good side with some world-class players, and it's going to be tough, but they're not going to give up, and an early goal in Paris, you never know.
You're right, quite rightly, and obviously there's a lot of talk now with that big win against Chelsea, and about Ole himself. Obviously you know Ole, I know Ole. Do you think Ole could potentially get the job? Do you think the powers, the people at the top could give him the job?
Oh, potentially, without question. I mean, anybody with a I mean, I think that if you were talking, and this is no disrespect to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer whatsoever, he knows what I think of him, both as a player and as a person. I don't actually know his managerial criteria, other than he did win the league with Molde. And again, no disrespect, but the Norwegian league is not, renowned as and one of the top leagues in Europe. But if we were talking about, I don't know, an Antonio Conte who'd come in and done this job, I think the job would have been given to him straight away. I think if we were talking about a proven manager who's done it at the top level, albeit at different clubs, with the record that Ole Gunnar has had between Christmas, just before Christmas and now, then you would be talking about giving a manager the job that's done so well. And I'm not suggesting for one second that they won't give him the job. I think that they did perhaps have him only in mind as an interim manager and couldn't possibly have foreseen what a brilliant impact he would have had.
And he's had a brilliant impact, as we all know that, and as United fans everywhere all over the world, they obviously want him to get the job, and I think getting that loss but then bouncing back for it is massive. I think moving along, as we've got these bigger games coming up, he's still got a few tests, but I think without losing and then responding to it, you never know. So I think that's been important for that bounce back. But the rest of the week, it's been an interesting week, international week. There's been some quite controversial things happening. I don't know whether you watched the Schalke and Man City game.
I didn't know, unfortunately. I didn't see it.
Obviously, City started well. They won, leading 1-0. Aguero scored, but Schalke went ahead 2-1 with a quite controversial VAR incident. I don't know whether you know. So it's been kicking off, and one of the questions I'm going to ask people listening: what's your thoughts on VAR? Is it something what's going to improve the game, or is it something 3 minutes they was waiting to try and get the decision on the handball? Ultimately, it was given. Most people think that was a bad decision. What are your thoughts? Please send in your reply, and we'll have that debate. And it's an interesting one, Ben. So VAR was in the World Cup. What were your thoughts on the VAR system?
If they can get it to work and it doesn't become detrimental to the overall running of the game,
flow of the game,
3 minutes is too long. There was another incident in the Madrid Juventus game with a goal that was disallowed for a push in the back, which they said that they were still couldn't decide from 7 or 8 different camera angles. Eventually it was ruled out, but there was really nothing in it, and it should probably have stood. There's always going to be controversy with these things. I do feel for the really, really important decisions, and I'm talking about decisions that cost clubs millions of pounds. I'm talking about that might cost somebody his job. Where a team who should be relegated or should stay up or should be promoted or should stay in the same division, I think that they are the key decisions as to when VAR needs to come in. Was it a definite penalty? Because if it's not, then that team gets relegated. If it is, and they need to win to stay up, and it's not given, then maybe they might have stayed in the division. They are the key elements for me. And
I think that's why they're thinking about bringing it in. I think for them really subjective moments, like a push, it's difficult, and some players can faint a little bit. But objective, does it go over the line?
Which is what happened in the Madrid-Juventus game. Yeah. It was a slight push, and I think it was Bonucci went over as if he'd been shot, and the goal was disallowed because of it. But there was there wasn't anything in it, and this is where you need a panel of people very, very quickly to say yes or no. 3 minutes is getting way too long.
But with the VAR, if we went back in time, you maybe looked at the England goal in the 1966 World Cup, or you look at Maradona with the hand of God. I think VAR there would be really, really useful.
Of course. Well, I mean, VAR, you wouldn't need VAR for the goal because obviously you've got goal line technology these days. But certainly for the Maradona handball, in a split second you'd be able to see that his arm was above his head, and he's put it in with his hand. And obviously without VAR, that's been proven. But at the time, that was really important. important.
Exactly. Cheats. Anyway, so Man City went on to win that game. They got a last-minute goal with Sterling to win 3-2, so that was a good victory for them. Looking forward to the Man United's next game is obviously against Liverpool. A big game again. Man City are at the top of the league, but with the same points as Liverpool with the game in hand. So with this game where Man United are playing Liverpool, ultimately we could do Man City a favour with this game. And how do you see this going?
Yeah. Yeah, for the first time probably ever, Man City will actually be Man United fans, because it will not only help them in terms of the league, but they've got a cup final to go after it. And I just feel as though psychologically, if they know that Liverpool have slipped up at Old Trafford in any way and that have left the door open for them to take a lead, then I can see them doing to Chelsea what they did to him, last weekend. Because but then if Liverpool, and I hope this doesn't happen obviously, but if Liverpool do manage to get a victory at Old Trafford, then they realise that they're looking over the shoulders then, and maybe their minds are going to be more on the fact that Liverpool have overtaken them again, rather than the task in hand, which is to go and beat Chelsea in the Carabao Cup and be the first team to retain it, by the way. So Mickey Mouse Cup or not, whatever you want to call it, they'll be the first team to do that. So they'll want to make sure that they turn in a performance and put them to the sword like they did a few weeks ago. But the United match, I think that we are, because
it's one of the biggest games on the calendar. Man United v Liverpool. Back in the day when we was playing ourselves, playing Man City, there was maybe a few leagues below, but that Liverpool game, that was like raw sort of aggression. The Liverpool and Leeds games really, but the Liverpool's massive, eh?
Yeah, always. When you played teams from Merseyside, even Everton when we were growing up as well, you had Liverpool and Everton, and they were always, even as kids, they were always games that we didn't want to lose. The coaching staff didn't want us to lose. It means a lot at all levels, but when you get to first team level, it's astronomical. It was the first game that Sir Alex Ferguson always used to look out for. Not the one at Old Trafford, funnily enough, the one at Anfield, because that was always what he said was anybody's toughest test. But without any question, more so Man United. But we are in a much better place now. I think that Liverpool have stalled somewhat. I know they had a good win against Bournemouth not too long ago, but the front three are not firing. Only maybe Mane, but Firmino, Salah have gone completely missing. And in a couple of games that I've watched Liverpool, and I do watch them quite a lot, they've seemed to run out of ideas. And ironically, Bayern Munich the other night, 0-0, is not a bad result at home in Europe, because they are always, with that front three that they've got, capable of nicking a goal. And they were without Virgil van Dijk, so he will steady up what they will do on Sunday for sure. But I just feel as though, is there a chance of Anthony Martial and Jesse being back? I hope so, or at least one of them, because then we can try and get back to that the way we've been so successful. Yes, we did change the way we played against Chelsea. We had to, but I think that with Jesse in the team, we are definitely more dynamic. We've got somebody that can make runs with and without the ball, and somebody that is capable of scoring you a really important goal, and he's proved that over the years. We're better equipped now than we would have been a couple of months ago, more so because we're playing a lot better, and I don't think Liverpool, despite their league position, are playing as well as they have shown already. Be an interesting game.
Yeah, it'll be a great game, tasty game. I'm sure the fans will all be watching, and I was lucky enough to play one of them games myself at Anfield, and we won, so that's a nice occasion to be a part of. But just changing the tone a little bit, obviously last week was a terrible week for the football world, and especially for Man United and ourselves, who was coached with Eric Harrison, who was very sadly passed away. I spoke about this last week, but you was a part of that class of '92, and you had Eric yourself, and just tell us maybe a quick story of something about Eric and his relationship with you and the rest of the lads of that group. And unfortunately, Tuesday we're going to his funeral in Halifax, and what that guy meant to you.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken so much about this in the last week, and yeah, it's been a very, very sad time for everybody. I mean, Eric was not just a footballing man, but he was somebody that that sort of carved out a pathway for us, not just in football, but for the rest of our lives. You know, it was like a blueprint for how we should behave, and with, you know, things like just commitment, dedication, working hard, respect, and he did all this by making us into footballers, as well as by making us into men. And from a very early age, you know, when there's not many professions whereby where at 16 you are expected to adjust straight away to a man's world. And you know, by the time you get to July, most of us, well, at any time when you join the club at 16, as we did then, you'd only been out of school for, you know, best part of 6 weeks, 2 months or whatever it was, and straight away you were into a man's world. And I remember, I mean, there are many stories about Eric, and a lot of them now we can, our lads, and you're the same, Clegg, will look back on with fondness, because some of the quotes that he used to come out with when you were on a football field, and obviously the infamous, you know, bang on the window at the Cliff that used to happen a lot, and you didn't really mind that as much, but when you saw him actually make the journey downstairs and appear at the dugout at the Cliff, then you knew somebody was in trouble. But he was a fair man. Yes, he could give you a rollicking, but I'm pretty sure that even, and I put it in my book as well, that I think that during the course and the build-up to a week of an A-team game, I think he'd identified who it was that he was going to pick out and have a go at the weekend, just because he wanted to see what the reaction would be. And you have to have a certain amount of mentality to play for Manchester United, and he started you off with learning that, and very, very quickly you understood that you needed to be able to withstand a rollicking and be, you know, build your character up from it.
He was almost used as like a sieve, wasn't he? You know, he sieved out the weaklings and the good ones can rise. He
did that, yeah. He was very, very good at that. And some, you know, over the years, and I'm not just talking about the class of '92 that I was a part of, but, you know, you forget people like David Platt, Norman Whiteside, Mark Hughes, they were all under Eric. People after us like Wes and Darren Fletcher, you know, they've all had dealings with Eric, and they've all become better people for having him.
I think me and Stephen were talking last week in the quarters, he brought 38 players through to be full internationals, which
it is an unbelievable record.
Luck. That's not luck.
Of course it's not. It's an unbelievable record, and he lived for his football. I know that when I left the club in '98 and I went, you know, and joined a club that wasn't too far away from his hometown in Huddersfield, where he obviously lived in Halifax, that I used to see him on a fairly regular basis, and that I'd like to think that was partly because he wanted to see how I was doing, like he would have done with many of the people that left him. He was interested to see how the career padded out, but also because maybe it wasn't too far away from him, and he just loved football that much that he could just go and watch a game. It just so happened that, you know, I was playing, but that was the way Eric was. He helped you, and he helped you in some ways, and at some times you didn't feel as though he was helping you, but in his own roundabout way, he knew what he was doing to get the best out of you, and yeah, it's terrifically sad, but I know that he'd not been well for a while, so it's sort of a little bit of a blessing in disguise that he doesn't have to suffer anymore, and he's not putting his family through any suffering and worry anymore either.
And I imagine on Tuesday there'll be a great turnout for him, and there'll be an amazing Man United sort of guest list, and people just celebrating what he did and helped so many careers. Yeah,
if you arrive anywhere, you know, over an hour before the time of the funeral, I don't think you'll be able to get close. It will be a who's who of anybody in football that's come across Eric from Manchester United. There's no question, because he touched that many people, and his legacy at Manchester United will live on for a while. He's left an indelible mark on the club, there's no question.
And so it should, yeah, exactly. So Ben, changing the subject to something more personal to you, you brought out a book recently. How the book sales going, and
When you say recently,
and I can only imagine. I've not read it myself. I thought he was going to bring me one today.
I know. I should have done, but I'd ordered a few copies from the publishers and they'd not arrived. So
they're just selling out too fast, guys. So make sure you get your orders in. The Ben Thornley story is going to be brilliant.
It's been it's been out for good 4 months now. It was out on the. I think it was in the shops on the 15th of October,
right.
And I mean, it had received some really good publicity. There's no two ways about that. I mean, how the sales have gone, I've no idea. I would imagine that the publishers will wait until they've decided that whether they're going to do a paperback version,
okay.
Or another hardback version ready for the summer holidays, etc. and what have you. But I didn't do it for financial gain. I did it because somebody convinced me that I had an interesting story to tell. I completely disagreed, but in the way that Dan Poole, that my co-author, wanted to approach it, I thought, do you know what? Now we'll see how popular I was with all the people that I need to get involved. But do you know, apart from one or two who did have the reasons why they couldn't get involved. I had an unbelievable turnout for people that have helped me, from family and friends to people who played at the very top, like your Becks, like your Gaz, Scholesy, anybody who I played with. Like I said, there were very, very few that either didn't do it or couldn't do it. And I was thrilled to bits with the way it had been put together, the way Dan had written it, and also by the way it was received as well. And yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, but certainly the people that have gotten back to me on social media and the things that I've seen in from that have. People in magazines or newspapers that have done reviews have the result of the reviews have been really favourable, so I can't complain.
Cool. Well, I've known Ben for a long time, and he's certainly got lots of good stories, so it's definitely worth a read or a buy. So definitely do that if you can. So well done with that, Ben. So moving on now, I have my Angels and Devils section, and this week's an interesting one. We're going to give the Angel this week to Pogba, just because of his consistency, with the way he's been playing at Man United, and also I think he's really allowing Ole to hopefully get the job. And we know Pogba can be a difficult character to manage, so to speak, but he's definitely doing everything right at this moment in time. So my Angel of the week this week is Pogba. We spoke about him a little bit already, so well done to him. But my Devil this week is an interesting one. Just breaking news this morning, and that's Chelsea had just been given a 2-year transfer embargo.
Two window, not 2
years. So like 1 year then, is it?
They won't be able to sign anybody else if that's the case until next summer. Summer of 2020.
So basically they've been found out to have possibly got 29 under 18 players with unregulated registrations. So that's quite an interesting one, because obviously the manager Sarri now, there's talk, is he going to keep his job, not keep his job, but if you bring in somebody new,
no choice now.
It's difficult. So what's your thoughts on that?
They're going to have to keep him, because as attractive as a job Chelsea will be, number one, you're not going to be there that long. And number two, if you've got nothing in terms of, and Chelsea do need things, you never know whether Hazard's going to be off, and they are short. They're sadly lacking at the moment. They've not had they've let Morata go. They've not had a centre forward virtually the whole season. So they do need to spend, and obviously they've got money that they can spend, but now they're not allowed to. So is that an attractive offer for a manager coming in, knowing that he's only going to be there for a relatively short term anyway? I mean, the chances are a manager who did take the plunge and say, yeah, okay, if you're going to sack Sarri, I'll have the job, he might not even last until the transfer embargo ends.
Exactly.
So I would be very, very sceptical that anybody else is going to be given that job. I think that Sarri, whether they like him or not, with this news that's just broken, I think that he's in the job certainly until the turn of next year.
So yeah, Chelsea got themselves in a bit of a pickle, and they're the devil of the week. So let's watch this space to see how Chelsea do. But just to finish on, I want to send out a special message and best wishes to Matt Taylor. Matt Taylor was an under-23 player at Man United, and We know he's been suffering with a really bad illness, and he's recovering from chemotherapy at this moment in time. And if anybody out there is willing to donate through Virgin Money to Max Taylor number 2, please do that, because that's obviously something which is really important to him and his family, and we wish him all the best. Do you know him, Ben?
I don't know him. Obviously I knew about his plight, and it's it's just terrible at such an early age, but hopefully he's got the battling qualities that any footballer needs to possess to overcome a life-threatening illness, and yeah, I echo that, Clegg. I do wish Max all the best. Yeah,
so please guys, if you can support Max, that'd be great. And Ben, thank you very much for doing this topical football segment. And,
no problem. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Top man.